One of the very first promises I made to myself when I lost my husband was that they had already lost their dad to suicide and depression. I couldn't let them lose their mom to grief. I knew that I had to do what I could to try to handle my grieving journey with grace and show them that it's okay to cry. We do have our bad days. But trying to just be as positive as I can and just kind of share with them the message that unfortunately we don't get to kind of choose the circumstances that life hands to us, but we do have the ability to choose our attitude and our behavior and how we kind of carry on from it. And so even though it is something that completely changes our life, it's something that is just devastating, we can try to find some growth and lessons on the journey and learn how we can do what we can to just spread love and joy. Trying to carry on with our lives. We're still living. We're still here. So trying to do the best to set that example for them and just really try to be there for them, listen to them, talk to them, about their dad as much as I can, because I do want them to remember him. You know, I don't want them to feel any sort of shame or feel like it's something we can't talk about. You know, he was a great guy. He was a great guy. And depression is real.
Welcome to The Narratives of Suicide, the podcast where we bring hope, community, and a voice to those who've lost to suicide. It's where we dispel the myths of suicide. We dispel historical discourses and constructs that have been steeped in history for a very long time, and we're here with hope, love, and support for everyone out there who needs to listen to this podcast. I'm so sorry you're here, but I do hope it can give you something to use in your healing process, to be able to pick up the pieces of suicide and put them back together again in the best possible way that you can.
Okay, so today we're here with our beautiful guest, Victoria, who is here to share her story. Sad that she's here with us, because obviously any story of suicide is sad that we're joined in this way, but we did meet a couple of weeks ago through sort of clubhouse collaboration, coming together as suicide, loss, bereaved. I don't want to call it survivors. For me, survivors doesn't always feel right, but whatever you want to call that. We're here together as both bereaved through suicide, and we wanted to join this kind of group in Clubhouse to make it more accessible, to help people understand it a bit more. And that's where we met a couple of weeks ago. And Victoria is in, where are you? Which country? I've forgotten.
I'm in the US, so I'm in San Diego, California.
Yeah, so warm.
Today's kind of gloomy and cold by my standards. It's about 64, 65, so that's cold for us.
Gosh, it's freezing here and it's muddy, really muddy in the UK. So yeah, sad that we're here together. Welcome, Victoria. Welcome. So Victoria lost her husband, Marcus, nearly 2 years ago now. So hence why we're here today, really, just to hear what's happened in your life since you heard what happened or since you experienced the whole loss. If that's kind of point A. And this is point B today, right now, February 2021. What's happened in those 2 years? Just tell us your story. You know, really want to hear what it's been like for you. The ups and the downs, the roundabouts, everything that's come with it.
Yes. Well, this is obviously not a journey that I expected to be on. I unexpectedly lost my husband in May of 2019. And it was very hard losing my husband. That was one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. But probably the hardest was having to tell my children that their dad was gone and having to parent through the grief, because grief in itself is very complicated and takes a lot. And then when you're having to help two little ones grieve along the way, it's hard, right? And there's no real handbook. You don't really know what to do. So you're kind of having to, in a sense, go with the flow and trust your heart and just kind of have grace with yourself along the journey. So for us, I was very blessed in the fact that prior to losing my husband, I had been very passionate about educating people to live happier and healthier. So I had been learning myself and becoming certified in a lot of different mind-body modalities. So everything from yoga and meditation, hypnotherapy, neurolinguistic programming, aromatherapy. I trained with a clinical psychologist with a technique called aroma freedom technique that's really good for PTSD and different memory resolution. So I had had all of this training prior to losing my husband, which I'm so blessed for, because it has been just essential for helping myself and my children to heal. if it wasn't for everything that I had learned beforehand, I don't know where I would be on my journey right now. I think I would be a lot further back than I am right now. So that has been a blessing. So trying to do what I can every day to incorporate the different techniques, everything from journaling to meditation to hypnotherapy, and then also working with different practitioners, right? So there's talking to a therapist, there's a different technique like the EMDR, pairing all of those with working with a practitioner, which has been a little bit harder due to COVID. So again, I'm very thankful for the skills that I've learned to be able to do on my own in the comfort of my home.
Wow, yeah. Wow. Credit to you, yeah, that you've sought all of that support. It sounds like you've gone out there. Did you have to go out there and find that? Did it come to you easily to go out there and get that support?
As far as what I had learned before, or
just what you've had since the therapy?
What I've had since, no, that I've had to actually go out and seek one-on-one and in person. And like I said, with COVID, it's made it a lot harder. More stuff is virtual, online and stuff, which is still good. But I'm very grateful for having the knowledge and the skills of being able to do things on my own and being able to share that with other people has been completely helpful.
Yeah, so the mix of using it yourself, helping other people with it, but also knowing how to access it, I guess you could then, because I guess you had the benefit beforehand, knowing how it affected you. Just beforehand, I guess you just saw the benefits of all those things by teaching them, by using them, so that then when you really needed it, it made it so much more accessible, didn't it, to just tap into those and use what you could.
Exactly. And so it would have been harder had I been trying to learn it after the loss, because I mean, you know how it is. When you experience such extreme grief and trauma, you're basically in a fog. It's very hard, at least for me, it has been, and I've heard from other people too, very hard for your brain to kind of hold on to any sort of new knowledge. So I don't think that I would have been able to learn as much as I knew beforehand. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So that fog, what was that fog like? How long did it last? How did you experience it?
Some days I still feel like I'm in it, honestly. I mean, it's gotten better, but there's still days, and me and my widow friends, we call it widow brain because it's crazy. And it reminds me of almost like when I was pregnant, when I would have what I called pregnancy brain, where you just forget things. You just make a lot of careless errors, keys in the refrigerator type of thing.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain, but yeah, it's kind of surreal to actually experience.
And that's been, so you're still having it today. It's not like a period that was happened and then stopped. It still happens.
No. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot heavier in the beginning of it all, definitely a lot heavier. And then it's gotten better, I would say, after about a year and a half, but there's still days where I'm just like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, it's just like my brain is just like mush. I can't think of anything. Or when I do think of something, it's all about the events that surrounded that day, and they can become all consuming. And so grief is crazy. Some days it can be like it never happened. It's like everything was normal. It never happened. And then out of the blue, I'll hear a song, or there will be some sort of reminder that I'll just stop and I'll be like, oh my gosh, that actually happened.
Yeah, I hear that for sure. Yeah, it's crazy. And that you just suddenly, I'll just look at a picture of my brother and it's like, really? Oh, really? Did that happen? It's almost like I go through a period of just, life's normal, it's okay. And then suddenly, bam, you're just back into that. Yeah, like you say, there's events, you get taken back there, your memory does, doesn't it? And I guess, so if you had EDMR, or you do practice it?
I had one session. Yeah. And I really, really liked it. I would like to do it more. It was just pricey. And so cost-wise and insurance-wise, unfortunately, it wasn't something that I've looked into some other kind of, I guess, DIY alternatives I've seen where you can get actually like the hand pods to have at your house. And so I've thought about, with my skills of hypnosis and meditation, if I could kind of, in a sense, recreate it, I guess.
Tell us more about that then, for anybody who doesn't know what the hand pods are. Can you explain that a bit more?
Yeah, so there's different ways that you could do EMDR, right? The one that I did, they had me hold these little pods in my hand that would like vibrate. And so it helps to kind of like dissolve the memory, right? Break up the memory complex when you're having a PTSD episode and so I don't know too much about it. I had heard about it. I learned about it when I went to Camp Widow, which was kind of like a 3-day conference for widows that I attended a few weeks after my husband passed. And so a lot of people in there were talking about it. So I ended up finding a practitioner who did EMDR, and I went for one session. And because like I said, I didn't have insurance at the time, I had lost my insurance. And so I paid for it out of pocket. And I really wanted to see how it would work further and get more sessions. But unfortunately,
it's the cost really, rather than more than anything else that
Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
unfortunately. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been looking to see if there's other more cost-effective
Mm,
practitioners in my area, but I have not had
mm,
very much luck.
okay. So it did help the one session you had, but yeah, you felt there could be more to be
Yeah,
done.
I definitely noticed
Mm,
a session. And I know for me, I mean, I'm very receptive to different techniques. I think it's because I've been very familiar with doing different ones my whole life. So I'm very receptive to them.
yeah.
So I'm not going to say like, oh my gosh, it was life changing. Cause like I said, I had one
Mm.
session, but I felt a lot better afterwards. I felt very relaxed. And I think that if it was something that I could do regularly, I would like to see.
Yeah, and it's great you knew that was there, because I think a lot of people don't realise the PTSD aspect of grief. Is that anything where it's traumatic grief, you've got any of the events surrounding it can lead to that PTSD, can't it? And I think people don't understand the difference necessarily between healthy, with inverted commas, healthy kind of memories that are part of the grieving process. When I say healthy, I mean part of the grieving process. They're kind of part of just getting over what happened surrounding it. And those kind of flashback moments where you're sensorily you're back there in a flash, you're kind of overtaken by that. And that's kind of more of those flashbacks, a sign of that PTSD. And I think it's important for people to recognize the difference so that then they can get help if they need it with EDMR or whatever they can access. And I think that's something I speak a lot about. Where is that support and where is it accessible?
Yeah.
I know it's different in the States to the UK. Obviously, we've got the NHS and it's different insurance-wise, I know, and I don't know the ins and outs of it in terms of the US, and I don't know what that's like to live with, but that's a huge political subject, isn't it, of how we access. But that's one of my big missions, really, to educate whoever needs educating that this specialist supports need to be made available for people that have suffered a suicide loss, particularly because that's my specialty, really, rather than other types of grief, which I know do have PTSD aspects, definitely. And I think, it's really helped. It's interesting that you got that and you couldn't afford it, but you got it because you knew, because you had the background in it. It's so helpful, isn't it, to know that you kind of looked for those things, didn't you? You actively, Widow Camp was only a couple of weeks after. So what was that? Yeah, really quick.
So I had a friend who had gone through grief of a different kind. She had lost her young child in childbirth, but she had kind of been connected with the grief community. So when I lost my husband, she reached out to me and said that she was speaking to a widow friend of hers who recommended that I look into what was called Camp Widow. So I looked into it. This was very shortly after my husband passed. I want to say it was maybe like 3 or 4 weeks that she had told me this, maybe not even that long. And I looked into it, and it happened to be in San Diego, which is where I live. And it was just a few weeks out from when my husband passed. So because I didn't have to pay for airfare and hotels and all that, I booked my ticket. And it was so helpful for me because widows of all different types of loss, right? So it wasn't specific to suicide, but they would have all sorts of different like workshops where there would be workshops for dating after loss and finances after loss and raising children after loss and all sorts of stuff, kind of navigating your new life. And then they would have like different mixers. So there was one, it was like a happy hour type of event. And they had different stands at all these tables. And it would say widowed by suicide or widowed by cancer or widowed by a car accident, different ways that you lost your spouse. They would have widowed with children, widowed without children. So just all sorts of people. So you can kind of network and connect with other people that had similarities. And so for me, it was very helpful because for me, being a young widow, I was 37 years old when I became a widow. I felt like a unicorn. I didn't know anybody who was my age and was a widow. Everybody I knew who was a widow was, 65 or older. And so being able to go to this type of workshop and meet with other young widows and hear other people's stories just helped me kind of feel not so isolated and not so alone. I can be with other people who truly understood grief and not just my friends and family who, although were very supportive, they couldn't really understand what I was going through. So the Camp Widow to me was huge as far as helping me kind of navigate early on how I wanted to kind of process my grief.
Yeah. And that came from a friend's recommendation, but you going out and there and doing it, looking at the details, having to physically pick yourself up, I guess, and say, I'm going to go and do that.
Yeah.
And that in that early period, I can't imagine what that would have been like, just to pick yourself up and go and do something so directly linked to the grief, really, isn't it? So early.
Yeah. I know. And it was scary because, here you are, you're going somewhere by yourself to a widow conference, like, ew, a widow conference. Why am I going to a widow conference. That's weird. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a widow. Like, this is my new life. It was so surreal. Like, even still, when I tell people, they're like, a widows conference, there's such thing as widows conferences. And I'm like, I know, it's crazy, right? Like, before loss, you don't realize that all of these resources exist. And thank goodness that they do. But before you've been blindsided, you're completely naive to all of this. You have no idea that there's a conference for widowed people.
So yeah, blindsided, complete and utter what? Again, goes back to that what, doesn't it? That bit feeling of sense of surreal, I think I'd call it. Just an absolute...
Like a dream, like a really bad dream. You just want to wake up.
So going to the widow conference, so early, although it took you that fog you talked about, I don't know how bad that was at that point, but, just in that period, seeking out help, support, and you had to pick yourself up and go there. Like you say, so surreal that you even go into a widow conference. So, because again, you hadn't sort of identified with it yet, really, probably had you at that stage? It was still...
No, I was,
Do you ever identify with it? Do you identify with it now?
Now I do, but at the time it was weird too, because the conference happened to fall on what was supposed to be our anniversary. So that was another, of course, all the dates that get you, all the milestone dates. So that was weird. It was like what should have been our anniversary, and here I am at a widow's conference.
There's so many dates as well, isn't there? There's the day they died, the day, the anniversary, the birthdays, the Christmases,
holiday,
kids' birthdays, I guess, just everything, just done it,
everything,
and I guess it's us knowing that that's okay when those periods come around. For me, autumn, my brother died in November, so when the first, it's not so bad now, but the first few years when the leaves in the UK, you start to see the seasons change. Sort of October, you see the leaves start to fall off the trees in September, October, and you just that, and I didn't realise, I didn't connect it, but it was because it just reminded me of the sense of the air. The air was kind of
how it felt
that day, and I didn't. It was like really unconscious. I think it was the second year after I thought, maybe autumn's going to be difficult. Not just November, the actual date, but the season. And actually, it's not as bad as it used to be. And I'm 5 years on, so it'll be 5 years this autumn, the end of this year. Well, not actually 5 years on. Wishful thinking, isn't it? It's like that's just over 4 years on, and you've just got that. I've got that sense. It wasn't as bad this year for me. Autumn wasn't. Obviously, the date was, but not the season. I think again, it's just knowing things change all the time, don't they? Shifts and changes happen. So can you talk a little bit more about the kids and how you've managed that? Because I guess the widow conference helped with that, because there was probably lots of talk about that, was there, to help you to know what to do?
There was. So I did attend a lot of the parenting ones, because that was kind of my biggest concern, was how to parent as a widow, how to parent through my grief and parent through their grief. One of the very first promises I made to myself when I lost my husband was that they had already lost their dad to suicide and depression. I couldn't let them lose their mom to grief. I knew that I had to do what I could to try to handle my grieving journey with grace and show them that it's okay to cry. We do have our bad days, but trying to just be as positive as I can and just kind of share with them the message that unfortunately, we don't get to kind of choose the circumstances that life hands to us, but we do have the ability to choose our attitude and our behavior and how we kind of carry on from it. And so even though it is something that completely changes our life, it's something that is just devastating, we can try to find some growth and lessons on the journey and learn how we can do what we can to just spread love and joy. Trying to carry on with our lives. We're still living. We're still here. So trying to do the best to set that example for them and just really try to be there for them, listen to them, talk to them, about their dad as much as I can, because I do want them to remember him. I don't want them to feel any sort of shame or feel like it's something we can't talk about. He was a great guy. He was a great guy. And depression is real.
Yeah, it sounds like, you're really real with it. If you need to cry, they see you crying, and that's okay. If you need to be positive, they see you being positive. It's beautiful that you're framing it like that for them. I think a lot of people struggle with knowing, do you even tell the children? Do you know what I mean? I don't know if that went through your head. What do you tell them? That certainly went through my head, just with my children, their uncle. Do I say he killed himself, or do I just say he died? Because mine were, 5 at the time, between 5 and 10. Just that in itself, you need someone to tell you, don't you, what to do, who knows what the hell to do, because...
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I said, there's no handbook for here's what you do. Hold on, guys. Let me grab out the handbook. Hold on. I didn't read that chapter yet.
Especially when you're an absolute shock yourself and they see that.
And I think that every situation is different. And I think that whatever somebody decides to do in that moment is the right thing. There is no right or wrong, and there are so many different dynamics. For us, I was very open and honest with my kids. They were young when it happened. They were 7 and 9, but my children are very emotionally mature. And so I felt like what was best for us was to be honest with them. And so I was, I let them know your dad was sick and his brain was sick.
Yeah.
He didn't want to leave us, but he didn't want to be in pain anymore. I had to really explain it in a way that it's not a bad thing. He didn't do this to be mean. He didn't do this because we weren't enough or he didn't like us or any of that. Mental illness, just like you can't stop somebody from dying from cancer or a car accident. You can't always stop somebody from taking their life due to mental illness. It's a real disease,
Absolutely.
And I don't like to use the term normalize, but we do need to make that known because a lot of people have a misconception about suicide. I know I did before I had experienced it so closely.
Yeah, misconception, or just don't even think about it. I didn't think about it until it happened to me. I just didn't even enter my consciousness.
Well, you don't think about it, but then when you do think about it, I think people are like, oh, well, that's selfish. They automatically think it's a selfish thing. And then they don't want to think about it because they don't like how it makes them feel. So then they don't want to think about it. But when they do think about it, typically it's around a sense of that person is selfish, at least from my experience. I've had people say that to me and I've had to tell them, I get where you're coming from. I understand that you haven't had the same experience that I have, but I can tell you from my experience, this was not done out of being selfish.
Gosh, that must have taken a lot of strength from you when you're going through your own grieving process to have to explain that to other people. You had to take on that responsibility because nobody else would they, because you're his wife, you knew him inside and out and you watched the depression, what it did to him, I guess, too. And you've got that understanding. And I guess you've got the impact then of the kids as well. And you want them to know that, don't you? That all of the things you said, and you don't want people to say, I guess, protecting them as well. So you're kind of protecting everybody, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, and just for other people to just have a true understanding of why this happens, how it happens, and maybe things that you can do to reach out to other people who might be having these same thoughts or feeling the same way.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it, that we recognise depression. And I think we're getting better at it for sure compared to 10 years ago. Absolutely. I don't think people realise connection necessarily with suicide. That is, like you say, it's real. Depression is real and suicide is real. And it's not. And choice is an interesting word that I've always sort of thought about since, Was it his choice? What is his decision? And I've had to find my own peace with that as well. He decided to, he chose to. Very difficult words to get used to and to sort of find my way with them, and everyone will find their different way to, again, like you say, like with telling the kids, we all find our ways to make sense of our individual cases because they're so complicated. I think the before, the after, whys, the meaning making of it, what we bring to it, like you with your awareness that you brought to it, that sounds as if it's given you such sort of strength and a care for yourself, really. That's how it feels to me, that you've just really looked after yourself the best way you can and your children the best way you can.
Yeah. I think that grief can either take you one of two ways, right? It could either just totally wash you out and make you not able to function very well, or it can make you kind of rise with the tide and do what you can to kind of power through. And so again, and not to say that it doesn't waver back and forth. Maybe you start out really strong and then something happens. Grief is very messy. Grief is very complicated. And so I know that even though I seem to be doing very well on my journey, I know that it's still a journey and it's not something that just ends. There's no timeline for grief. So I know here in the US, like after a year, people are like, oh, well, it's been a year. You must be doing so much better. And after a year, I was like, wait, it's been a year? I was in such a fog for the first year that it's like, to me, time was not even there. There was no such thing. Time was a complete illusion. And it was like when I just kind of started, when the realization set in and it was like, oh my gosh, my husband's really gone, like forever. That's when people are expecting you to kind of be over it. And you're just kind of coming to terms with it at that point.
Yeah. So when you hear that, people actually said that to you.
Oh yeah. After a year, you'll feel so much better. And I'm like, why? What happens in a year? Does he come back? I'm confused. What happens after a year? How does it get better? Unfortunately, it's people who haven't truly experienced loss themselves, and maybe they are saying something that they truly believe, or maybe they're just saying it to try to make you feel better, or I don't know what it is. But I realized how our society in general does not have a true understanding of grief unless you've actually experienced it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's just that solidarity then, like you say, with the widow, when they all got it. And I certainly feel that when I'm with people that have lost to suicide, just they get it. And you don't always have to say anything. You can just sit in silence sometimes and you just know they get it. And that's enough. You don't necessarily have to speak or do anything. you just know they get it. There's a deep, heartfelt sense of warmth and care and true empathy, I want to say, like absolute true regard for the other person. I sense, because we get it.
Yeah. Well, and with suicide too, there's so many complicated emotions that come with suicide. I mean, grief in general has lots of different emotions, but suicide, from my experience, I've lost grandparents, I've had miscarriages of my own, I've lost friends and cousins and this and that. But the emotions that come with suicide, the anger, the shame, the guilt, the resentment, I think is different than what you kind of experience with other types of loss.
Yeah.
And so it is very helpful when you speak to other people who have been very close to suicide loss, because they most likely have experienced those array of emotions just as you have.
Yeah. So the shame, it's interesting to talk about shame, I think, because it is one of those things like Brené Brown. I don't know if you've watched her TED talk, Brené Brown, about shame and how one of the key ingredients is silence. And I think we often just brush over the fact there is shame, and people, it's so, I think, heavily steeped in shame itself. Do you know what I mean? It's like the whole thing is so shrouded in and a misunderstanding, I think, and a real, like, say, unless you're actually there, you can't imagine why maybe somebody else would feel ashamed but I just think it really needs looking at a bit more, because I think for many it can stop them trying to access help, to go out there and ask for help, because I should, in inverted commas, be better by now. I should be getting over this by now. All those beliefs around time is a healer is a great one.
Yeah.
And again, it's just really important, I think, to recognise that if you are feeling that, it's part of the normal journey. Anger, grief, and responsibility, all of that stuff is all part of being a human, I think. Being a human that has experienced suicide with somebody that you care and you love, there's feelings that you're going to come across, you're going to have, and I don't want to say they're normal or okay, because they're not. They're there for a reason. And I think if they're sort of showing up a lot, that's when it's a sign that get help, find help, because there are support groups out there. There's Facebook groups that, dedicated to suicide loss, like you with your widow camp. How many groups and stuff are you a member of now with widows and suicide? And
a lot. I don't know. There's a lot of good ones on Facebook, and even just like a lot of good pages and stuff on Instagram. I don't know. I try to just find some that resonate with me. Probably, I would say between suicide and widow groups, probably about 8, maybe 10, something like that.
Yeah. Is it helpful? Does it help?
Some groups are more helpful than others. Yeah. In fact, there was a group this week that I've kind of thought, I might have to step back from this group, or at least mute it for a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. Some groups are a little bit more positive and uplifting. And obviously, it's a widow group, right? Obviously there's going to be sadness and grief and stuff, and that I can deal with. But sometimes I feel like some of their things can kind of bring up a lot of emotions, and
so and it's not helpful to you.
Exactly. So I think that, a lot of it for the most part is very positive and can be very helpful. But because it is so shrouded with grief and stuff, that there can be some that are just like very heavy. Yeah. And can kind of cause you to maybe have a rough day.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. It's really knowing yourself and noticing what happens in you. So if you see a post in a particular group, and you get a lot of those posts in that group, whether it's sad or positive, whatever the presentation is, it's noticing if you have that reaction and it's going to make your day harder than it would have been anyway, then maybe think whether you keep following that group or not. I think it's being really aware of yourself and aware what's helpful to you or not, because it's going to be different. It might help you to hear those kind of stories. Other people might not want to hear the positive ones. And if that's for you, it might annoy somebody else to hear the positive ones, mightn't it? But it's knowing what's right for you. Vital, so important.
Yeah, I think you just kind of got to find ones that resonate with you and make you feel good. Obviously, you're there to discuss grief, and you're there to discuss it with other people who get it. So obviously, there's some posts that are difficult.
What about helping other people? You mentioned you want to do more now of helping other people, like you're on this podcast. You're volunteering for this. I asked and you said yes, kind of thing. Yeah. We were on Clubhouse together every Wednesday night, 8:00. Everybody, we're going on Clubhouse to talk about this whole subject as a team. Yeah, what's that about? What's your sense of that?
So before I lost my husband, I was sharing a lot with, like I said, how to live happier and healthier. So I would do lots of workshops and different yoga classes, all sorts of different mind body things like that. And so when I lost my husband, I've been healing myself and my children. Now I'm trying to get back into helping to coach other people who have experienced grief and trauma. I have 3 albums on iTunes, Google Music, and Spotify. One of them is grief specific. So it is called Grief to Gratitude, and it's hypno meditations these scripts that I created and recorded to help with grief and loss. So all sorts of stuff to help with the healing journey. Like, for example, one of the tracks is for sleep, because sleep and grief don't always work out well together. I know my sleep patterns were way off when I lost my husband, and I'm just now starting to kind of develop back my old sleep patterns. So just kind of sharing that way my different hypnomeditations, doing different coaching sessions with like breathing techniques and stuff like that.
So how can they access that? Where would they go?
If they go to my website, yogimami.com, and it's spelled YOGIMAMI.com.
Mami.
And on my, I know it's spelled differently. It's not mommy like MOMMY. The Latin version of mommy. They can check me out there on my website or on Instagram, _yogi_mami. And I do lots of lives and IGTV episodes. Like today I did emotional freedom techniques. So the tapping and affirmations, kind of like walk you through a session. So every Monday I just kind of hop on and just do a live, some sort of mind, body, energy balance technique. I do a different one every week. So it's always a surprise.
Nice. Yeah, I saw that last week. You just sitting in front of the sofa. I just thought it was nice and relaxed. It was just you switching it on, and here I am. Yeah, it's lovely. Is that helping? Because you did it before, didn't you? So it's not that you lost your husband, then you said, "Oh, right, now I've got to become a counsellor. I've got to do this." And part of who you are.
I was doing it before. Now I've just kind of shifted. Now my focus is more on the emotional side and helping other people who have experienced grief and trauma.
Okay.
I mean, all this stuff was stuff that I was teaching before, right? So I do still think that for people that have not experienced grief and trauma yet, this is all stuff that still applies to them, because unfortunately, the universe has a way of just kind of knocking you down sometimes, catching you out of nowhere. So for me, like I said earlier, it was helpful to have these tools before I needed them. And so I do work with non-grievers too. I just think that these emotional balance techniques are things that they should be teaching in school. Everybody should be learning these.
I don't know if they have in the US, but we've got death cafes here, literally death cafes, to go and talk about death, because it's such a taboo subject. We don't want to face it, do we? We don't want to face we're going to die. It's like part of our defense system. Of course we don't. We want to live our life and live forever, but we're not going to live forever. And these death cafes are trying to just say, talk about it. Let's make it part of the normal conversation. And then our kids will see that too. The conversation with your kids that I am going to die. I'm going to stay with you as long as I possibly can. I'll do my best to stay with you as long as I possibly can, and have that kind of relationship with them, so that then and I certainly try and do that with my children, so that then I've got 4 teenagers and I want them to know that's part of me and part of my journey and part of all of ours, to make it something we can talk about. I mean, that's one step, isn't it? Just talking about death, let alone talking about suicide. It's like a different level, I think, of acknowledgement. I can't imagine having suicide cafes where everyone talks about that, because there's massive kind of, you might make it happen if you just talk about it. There's this whole...
People think it's contagious, right? It's so weird.
Imagine that. Suicide cafes. Wow.
Yeah.
Makes you...
I don't know about that. But I do think, we just need to normalize. So like on our Clubhouse last week, we were talking how all of us, everybody that we had lost was male.
Yeah.
So this is kind of where we were talking about how we need to start letting men know that you're allowed to have emotions. You're allowed to feel vulnerable. You're allowed to ask for help. You don't have to be strong all the time. And I think that that is something that we need to teach our children. We need to teach each other. We need to learn how to process our emotions, and they're real and they're valid and they're normal. And here's how we can help you. Because that, from my experience, losing my husband, he didn't want anybody to know that he was having these feelings. He was the strong guy who saved so many of his friends that were having these thoughts. So many of his friends were just shocked that he took his life, because they're like, how could he take his life when he saved me from taking mine?
Yeah.
And so it's like, sometimes you don't realize that your strong friends, your happy friends, are carrying something really heavy, and they don't know how to tell you.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And it's hard. And so I think that that's a big discussion that we need to have with our kids and the men in our life, and even the women in our life, to spread it with them. And we need to share it with everybody, because it's a real thing.
Yeah. For everybody. Yeah. Men. Yeah. That's strong. My brother, certainly, mask, complete and utter mask. If you saw a picture of my brother, oh my gosh, he was in a bodybuilding competition a month before. His body, an amazing body, 2 businesses, wife. To anybody else, it was like, yeah. And to me, that was how I saw him. But again, knight in shining armor, who underneath that was carrying that strength for everybody else, kindest man in the world. I wonder how many other stories are like that, these strong people that are able to hide it really well, actually.
Yeah. To the point to where when it happens, you're like, what? No, not him. No way. I mean, think about it. Anthony Bourdain, Robin Williams. I mean, there's a lot of them.
And I think we're talking in a couple of weeks about Carolyn Flack, who was in English, and we're talking a little bit then, because the message we've got from her whole story is be kind. Because the media and everything have been kind. I don't know if you know the story in the US, but if the media have been a bit kinder towards her, and it's the same for all of us. Even if someone looks strong, even if they appear strong, even if we can just say to them, are you okay? And actually mean it, not just you having a nice day, how are you? But really ask them, spend just 10 minutes, really asking them, even if they look on the outside strong, just really tap in. Anybody, we should be asking anybody that, shouldn't we? Spending the time, because it matters, it really matters. And it only matters at times like this, I guess, when we see what happens when we don't. We can wrap up soon if you like, because we've been here quite a long time. I just want to tap in a little bit to spirituality before we finish, because I think this is something I've journeyed on in terms of my making meaning of it. I don't want to say religion for me. It's not really about religion, but it is about a higher knowing. And it's helped me. It's helped me come to peace with my brother, knowing that maybe, life goes on. I don't know the answers to it yet. I haven't got, nobody does. But for me, it's been really comforting, sort of expanding my spiritual beliefs a little bit. It's fine if you haven't got any. I'm just interested to know with everybody that comes on if it's been a part of their journey or not.
Well, I was always very spiritual before. I grew up very religious and kind of have shifted more towards spirituality than religion. I wouldn't say that my spirituality has gotten stronger. However, I guess I feel very much at peace that he's no longer at pain, that he is in a positive place. I've actually spoken to a couple mediums that have sent me messages from him.
Okay.
Most of them the same messages, all different mediums that have no contact with each other or anything. So that to me just kind of confirms what I always thought before of what happens to us when we go. So if that makes sense.
Yeah. So
and I feel like he's very much with us and watching over us. And I get confirmation of that just with things like butterflies, or sometimes I'll ask for signs, like just, I don't know, all the little things, pennies here and there, and songs that come on randomly. And
yeah. And that's comforting.
It is comforting. It really is.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like you say,
it has been for me.
In peace, yeah. And you're getting all the signs that he's in peace, yeah.
Yeah, because he was suffering over here. It was very hard to watch. It was a hard thing to deal with. And as hard as it is to lose him, I do find comfort knowing that he's watching over us and he's at peace.
Totally, yeah. It's a lovely part to end it on, isn't it? I think. Lovely. Peace.
Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be here.
Thank you so much for telling your story, and sorry you have to be here, but it's a beautiful story, I think, of you and your strength. And through the hardest of things in the world, it kind of shows how maybe a shift in your perception sometimes can help. Maybe reaching out can help. You've shown that you reached out in the early days, even to today. You're actively doing things to help other people. It's a real movement in it. I think we said this on Clubhouse, there's a real movement in your journey. And like you say, it's not over. And I think your whole story just shouts of real strength, really, and that courage it takes to do all that stuff, even when success doesn't even touch it, really, whatever the word is.
Yeah.
So bow down to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks so much for joining us here today. I hope it served you and given you something for your journey with suicide. Come back and subscribe, like, do whatever you need to do on your platform to help us to raise awareness of suicide, because the more we keep saying the word, the more we can gain support for us left behind, and the more we can raise awareness of the word and how society sees it, and reduce this stigma that's so attached to it. Please get in touch. You can find me on my website, suicidegriefsupport.com, or at Instagram on Suicide Narratives. Send me a DM. I really want to hear from you. But for now, please take care of yourselves and take care of each other. And remember, we are stronger together.